Happy Thursday, folks. It is Zatimber. I gotta say, I just finished watching episode 4. And spoiler alert, both episode 3 and 4, in my book, 10 out of 10. Now, it's like I said, going into week 2, I said, week 1 didn't do it for me. They weren't bad episodes. It's just that episode 1 felt like they were closing the book on season 3. Episode 4, with the time jump in all 4 months, it's like, yeah, it's like they had to reestablish a lot of things. But this week, we kind of, hit the ground running in a way. I definitely feel like, by the time we get to episode 10, everything will be put into place for the things coming up in the back half of the season, sometime in 2026. But I really enjoyed both episodes. Maybe because Sistas just didn't do it for me last night. And there were just so many moments that made me smile, that made me laugh. It was just a whole bunch of stuff. So, without further ado, thanks so much for being here. I do appreciate the support on the channel. I just launched channel memberships because YouTube kept demanding, hey, do it. So I did. You can join different tiers. Think of it kind of like Patreon, but on YouTube. Hey, if you can't become a member, that's completely fine. I know money's tight, but if you want to support the channel, just you being here watching my content, hitting the thumbs up button, subscribing, all that good stuff, you help me that way. So I do appreciate your support, whether you become a member or not. There are different perks. It'll let you know when you click on it. But in any case, let's get into the review. It's Saturday morning. That's just a whole mood in itself. Fatima's upset that Zach is actually heading out to work when they're supposed to spend some time together. And let me just say, this is a running theme both in this episode and the next episode. It just felt so good to hear Zach say, oh, baby, sorry, I got to go to work. Or seeing him in the office. After seeing him bumming it on the couch for the past 2.5 seasons of Sistas, because if you remember, season 7 started off with him telling Michael, man, I gotta get my money right. Then he confronts Gary about the money he put into Gary's hands to kind of flip it, but Gary won't give it back, or technically he couldn't at that time because the feds had all of his assets frozen. But that leads into season 8 with the whole who stabbed Gary mystery, and then here we are halfway through season 9 with the only indication of work being when Fatima pointed Chaz in Zach's direction and he fumbled that. So Zach being at work is a massive plus. So the opening scene is just a bunch of playful banter, but it worked. It truly worked because I think it was a cute moment when, with Fatima being very pregnant, you had Zach helping her sit up in bed. I like that. It was just the little things. I feel like these 2 episodes felt like they had no obligation to do much aside from having these characters be their characters, because I don't need to say it for the 50th time, but what did I say about week 1? Ending season 3, time jump, reestablishing the status quo for season 4. But these 2 episodes, I could best describe it as Courtney allowed the characters to be themselves, and it really worked. Now, it turns out they're having a dinner for Zach and his business partner, since, Rise Ventures is back on the rise. So Bryce and Preston should be coming over. And then there's a playful moment in regards to Zach mentioning Fatima snoring like a bear. And she's like, I don't snore. And then he pulls out his phone and plays a recording. But then she gets him with a photo of him drooling and whatnot. Now, I find it incredibly funny because a couple years ago, my nephew, he snores, and just like his mama, my sister, and he's like, I don't snore, and I recorded him one day on my phone. So then when he got up and my mom was like, I heard you snoring from the living room. I don't snore. I played the video. That's not me. I'm like, yeah, it's you right there. So I did like that. That was funny. So yeah, this opening scene way better. And I hate to just keep bringing up how bad Sisters was last night, but way better than that opening scene between Sabrina and Maurice talking about that stupid dating app. So yeah, Zatima, it made me laugh. It was just good seeing the Zach and Fatima dynamic. It was great. All right. So we go to the new office space because remember last week Preston mentioned how Rise Ventures is named new location now. And let me just say that Zach's office gives off Zach vibes in the best way possible. I loved it. You know, even when he's sitting in behind his desk chair, or you know, we see a bunch of photos of Fatima and whatnot. I just like that. So Bryce comes in, and they're talking about the potluck later that night, and he says he's bringing over red wine, and Zach is like, "Wait, you're bringing red wine to a food function? Something that my pregnant fiance can't drink?" And Bryce drops a very accurate line. Well, Zach, I thought black folks don't be eating everybody's food. Yeah, that's right. But when it comes to a potluck, you're supposed to bring something. So I guess that over the 4-month time jump, the dynamic between these two has somewhat gotten better. Where in a lot of ways, Zach kind of acts like Bryce is his naive little brother. And I'm here for that because, you know, I'm not saying Zach had to get over Bryce because, look, aside from the whole kissing him in season 1, you had him messing up the money in season 2. Yeah, season 2. But it looks like they're on better terms. I don't want to say great terms. I shudder to say good, but I'll just say that they're on better terms now. And then the conversation shifts gears over to basically him being Angela's errand boy. You know, oh, I scrubbed. Okay, I ain't gonna lie. When Zach called him out for being Geek Squad, I did chuckle at that. You know, scrubbing those videos of her off the internet, mentioning how, you know, cooks for her and sleeps on the couch. And Zach is like, she's taking advantage of you, man. No, that's not it at all. Because he, you know, when he said cooking someone up with Angela, okay, what you got going on? Thinking it's sex, but no. But then he basically says, man up, put your foot down, and this is just a funny scene in itself. Yet again, the comedy just worked. It just did. So shout out to DeVal and I apologize. I cannot think of Bryce's actor's name off the top of my head. I'm a bit tired, but dang it, I feel bad because I should know his name, but I cannot think of it. But either way, y'all both did great. So that's when Preston comes in thinking, you know, awkward moment when, you know, Bryce is grabbing his, you know, himself like, you are not Michael Jackson. But yeah, Preston comes in and mentions how there's a commercial space opening up. And this is a great opportunity for them to invest. However, with Zach and Bryce being minorities, there's a bit of a disadvantage there. So they got to prepare for the obstacles in terms of the bidding war. So then, you know, he mentions the gumbo he has for the potluck. Wait, you know how to make gumbo? No raisins in it, right? Of course not. Well, and then Bryce's like, well, I like raisins. See, well, I'm glad you ain't cooking now. Honestly, I'd have learned how to make gumbo. Yeah, that would be cool. So from there, we go over to Fatima, who's mad because of the fact that she has to set up for this dinner on her own, considering Zach is at work. And she calls Angela, and it turns out Bryce asked her to be his date, even though Fatima wasn't aware that there were dates. And then that's when she calls Zach, and she's mad about the setup, but thankfully Angela's coming to help her out. And yeah, I'm big. I'll come home as soon as I can. I'm working. And then Preston sticks his head in the door. Hey, Zach, they just put an arcade game out here. What is it? Street Fighter. Oh, hell yeah. I kind of want to get an arcade game. Hey, that's not my cards right now. It's not a priority. You know, I'm working on my finances over here, but I do kind of want to get an arcade machine at some point. Now, then we go over to Nathan pretty much pulling the Martin inspirations are like interwoven into the scripts. You got Nate over there clipping his crusty feet, well, to toenails off his crusty feet. And all I could think about is when Cole was doing the same thing and got that big toe, the nail shot off, ricocheted around the apartment and hit Gina in the face. But anyway, Belinda comes down and chews him out for basically Belinda's doing to Nate what Danny's doing to Tony, calling him out for overstaying his welcome, messing up the place. and kicks him out. So he heads to the barbershop, and it turns out Lori wants him to come home to talk, and Tyrone and Tony encourage Nate to do so. And after he leaves, that's when Tyrone checks in with Tony, who's a bit kind of worse for wear. I mean, he looks like normal, but Tyrone can tell something's off, and he's like, "Yeah, can you close for me?" And here's what we learn. So it turns out that Tyrone stuck his neck out for Tony in order to cover up the situation, because don't feel guilt because it was self-defense. And, keep in mind, if you run your mouth to the wrong people or something, I'm going down with you because I covered it up. And it's like, I'm not going to say anything, and that's why I helped you out, because I know you won't. So don't worry about it. And then Tony gives him an awkward hug. He's like, "Hey, don't be making people think I'm soft up in here." And then we go over to Zach going back to the house with Fatima. And like I said, this was just an episode where the characters they were themselves, and in the best way possible. We get some more playful banter, and the differing views on the Angela and Bryce situation, where Zach calls out Angela for using Bryce, but at the same time, Fatima's like, she's not using Bryce because Bryce, should know what Angela's intentions are. And I see both sides of this. I do. And their stances make a lot of sense, because it lines up to like season 1, when Fatima wanted to expose Nate and Deja to his wife Lori, but Zach wanted to cover it up. It makes sense. This is consistent with their characters. So, he tried some of her food, and this was such a great moment, because I can't help but think back to folks. Yes, I'm going to reference Sisters again. When she made Zacco's, but Zach didn't want any, but to have him try her food there, I liked it. So everybody shows up versus Angela and Bryce, but then when Bryce tries to put his foot down, because Angela makes a comment about, yeah, Bryce brought wine, but thankfully I was able to make a dish at the last minute. It would have been something, better, but Bryce told me, didn't give me a heads up. And then Bryce tries to take Zach's advice, but it doesn't really work out in his favor. And then the tension is broken up when Preston and Deja show up, but, well, the tension gets flared up again because Fatima doesn't want her there. Then we cut to Jeremiah shooting up, and he sees his mom, and that's how the episode ends. I'm like, oh, wow. So, yeah, we know that in episode 2, Zach mentioned how he hasn't seen or been in contact with Jeremiah over the past 4 months, so it looks like he got out of jail, and he's back on that stuff, but seeing his mom, good grief. So, yeah, what a cliffhanger. But overall, solid episode. I enjoyed it. Hey, if you want to donate to the channel outside of being a member, feel free to do so on Cash App, PayPal, or Zelle. Every little bit is appreciated. But, hey, if you made it this far into the video, I got to thank you, because you are part of the reason why my YouTube channel is still successful. So, with that being said, if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, and make sure you check out my episode 4 review right after this one.